Rick, it is such a pleasure to be here tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming. I cannot think of an event that I would rather be moderating more on my first day on the job as the new president and CEO of the National Constitution Center than this wonderful discussion of Rick's superb new book. Rick, as you know, has been such a stalwart of the Constitution Center. He's provided intellectual and historical guidance. He gave me so much good advice and friendship as I began the exciting prospect of leading this place, and I'm just thrilled to be here with him. Rick embodies for me the best of what the National Constitution Center's mission is, which is to provide a platform for bipartisan debate and conversation about constitutional issues. The great strength of this book is that there is no ideology in it. It's told in a narrative way, and Rick brings to life the constitutional debates that animated the early republic. He does it by sharing the personalities and temperaments of the founding fathers, and he stresses the role of leadership and also of contingency. One theme that emerges from this great book is that it could have come out differently. It didn't have to be this way, and the fact that we have the Declaration of Independence, whose genesis he describes so well, and then ultimately the Constitution, had to do with the leadership and choices of particular people at a particular time. So I hope we're going to have a lot of these debates over the coming months and years. This is a national and international center for debates about the Constitution, where citizens of all political inclinations can set aside their politics and come and be exposed to the best constitutional arguments on both sides of any issue and make up their own mind. And I know that our conversation tonight is going to be a model for that sort of discussion. So thank you, Rick, for joining. Let's just jump right in with the wonderful portraits you paint of individual framers. The book begins, it has a cast of characters, and they're the main players, and he has these beautiful little portraits, these image paintings of the temperaments and characters of the leading framers, and helps us understand what made them tick. So, you know, we could begin anywhere, but I think I have to begin with John Dickinson, both because he was such a stalwart of the Philadelphia delegation. He does not appear in Signers Hall, as I saw when I went this afternoon and saw Ben Franklin and Gouverneur Morris, but no John Dickinson. And in your riveting telling, Dickinson's choice, his moral dilemma, his patriotism, his leadership was really central to the whole constitutional story. So tell me about John Dickinson.
So I'm happy to begin. How many of you have ever heard of John Dickinson? Okay, we got Philadelphia.
We got a great audience.
You know, I think if I went to any other city or any other state in the United States, there'd just be a couple of people raising their hands. But listen, before I talk to about John Dickinson, and this is supposed to be a serious, critical-minded discussion of this book and not a love fest, but
we're just getting started.
I really must say that as someone who has devoted more than 10 years of his life to the Constitution Center, before it opened in July of 2003, I am just so delighted that Jeff Rosen is coming in as our CEO. We have a constitutional scholar of the first rate, but who also has a passion for reaching out to the public. All of our discussions with Jeff about the prospect of leaving, or at least leaving for most of the time, the really easy life of academe to come here and run a place like this was just so inspiring to all of us who spoke with him. So we've really got some terrific times ahead for the Constitution Center. So I'm very happy about that. So John Dickinson, John Adams, who I really do want to say quite a lot about tonight. John Dickinson called him that piddling little genius. He was John Adams' chief adversary during the 22 months between September of '74 and July 4th of '76. Dickinson was, when this book begins, and the book essentially it initially begins with the Boston Tea Party, because that really was the kind of event that really ticked the British off and convinced them that they had to do something to put these Americans down. But the main focus of the book really is the 22 months in which the Continental Congress met. At the time the Continental Congress met, John Dickinson was probably the most respected political writer and thinker in America. His letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania really spelled out the American constitutional position and their denial of the right of the British Parliament to tax them. He was, in every respect, John Adams' polar opposite. He was thin, rather reserved in manner, and a man of great caution, both in his thought and speech. And the really important and decisive and difficult moment in John Dickinson's life did come on July 1st and July 2nd of 1776, in which, going against the sentiments of most of his colleagues in the Continental Congress, he spoke lengthily and passionately against independence. For a variety of reasons. One was that I do think he was a devout believer in the, quote, true principles of the English Constitution and wasn't ready to cast it overboard quite yet. But the other reason was that he wasn't all sure that Americans were sufficiently prepared to win a war against the British. They hadn't forged an alliance with the French or the Spanish yet. And so earning the antipathy of a good many of his fellow delegates, Dickinson voted against independence. But 2 weeks later, he was leading a battalion of Pennsylvania soldiers in battle against the British to fight for the Patriot Way. So Dickinson, for me, is really a model of principled opposition, but ultimately coming together for the common good. He ultimately, although he really was not willing to sacrifice his principles to vote in favor of independence, he supported it very much. And in 1787, in fact, did serve as Delaware's representative to the Constitutional Convention. He was not present on September 17th to sign it because he was ill back in Delaware, but his name's on the Constitution.
And, well, that's a riveting story, and actually, before I go any further, I've been reliably informed that you do a quite memorable impersonation of John Dickinson.
I do.
Can you share it with the group?
Well, I'm sorry, Jeff, but I can't because I'm not in costume. But, I've just retired from Penn, but until recently I had a modest research budget at the University of Pennsylvania, part of which I used to get costumes to dress as figures in American history. So, for example, I dress in full buckskin to do a Davy Crockett imitation in the American history. I'm sorry, not imitation.
This is the real thing,
impersonation in the American History Survey course. Until 9/11, I was able to walk across campus carrying a rifle. But they stopped me from doing that.
The Supreme Court tells us that's your constitutional right.
Actually, one of my favorites is Tom Paine. And there I dress kind of as a Philadelphia artisan. But one of my favorites here at the Constitution Center is John Dickinson. To be John Dickinson, I have to be more reserved than is my normal personality. I also do Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. You're all going straight to hell out there. Make no mistake about it.
That one must be fun. Well, Dickinson, as you tell the story, although he'd voted against independence, nevertheless, out of a sense of patriotism, withdrew behind the bar so that his vote did not count in the final tally about independence. Could that kind of civic mindedness and devotion to country exists nowadays? Is there an analog in modern politics to that sort of decision?
Not too many, that's for sure. I have been writing and speaking on the Founding Fathers' lessons in political leadership for our day. there are a lot of lessons that we can learn. I really do believe that the most important of all is humility. And Dickinson genuinely believed